The Lord a great shout. God's good. God's awesome. You may be seated, and on the way down, thank the band. You guys were amazing. Sharon, woohoo! That was so good. How good was that? Who loves that song, Make Room? I love that song. Did you write that, Les? Oh, thought it was one of yours. You know, it's a great song. Hey, it's so good to be in church on Sunday, the Lord's Day. If you got your Bibles, turn to Joshua chapter 4. And I thought for my last message of the year, I would just share about highlights. I spoke to the school staff on, I forget what day it was, Wednesday. They have a little devotion, a little bit on this. I'm taking this a little bit deeper. But I believe that when you get to the end of the year, it's a really good exercise that every year you stop and you reflect and you choose your highlights of what happened during the year. And you quiet down the lowlights so that the lowlights become insignificant and the highlights become here. Too often, what I hear is people are talking about the lowlights. And so what happens is that we fail to take what God has done and make that really affect us. Instead, we let our failures, our mistakes, our shames, where we are at life, rule us. And it's not a really good launching pad for 2025. So I would encourage you over the next 3 to 4 weeks before Christmas, spend time on reminiscing about the great things that happened this year. You know, one of the greatest things that happened in our church this year was there's a great couple, Alistair and Gail, that got married. And it was one of the greatest highlights. But also they rang me up and said, I'm bringing a couple into church. I said, oh, awesome. And in comes Sharon and Les Daly. It was a highlight. It's awesome. And we're just so blessed to hear Sharon sing. And Les's photography. Who's seen the photography that we put up on social media? His photography is awesome. If you can hire him out. Can you? Yeah, you should, man. He's one of the greatest. Man, he's so good. Hey, so if you got your Bibles, I want to read a little bit of a story on Joshua chapter 4. Who's there? Everyone there? Anyone bring their Bibles? I want to hear the pages. I love hearing the pages. You can't really hear anything on a screen, but when you hear the pages, it sounds so good. But I've got the screen here because from here, I can't even read the Bible. The words are so small, so I bring it out. So Joshua 4, it says, when all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out of the pile and pile them up on the place where you will camp tonight. This is when Joshua and the Jordan is dried up so that they can walk through the promised land. Verse 4 says, so Joshua called together the 12 men who had chosen one of them from each tribe of Israel. And he told them, go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God. And each of you must pick up a stone and carry it. Everyone say carry it. Carry it out on your shoulders, 12 stones in all, one for each 12 tribes of Israel. And we will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them they will remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the ark of the Lord's covenant went across. And these stones will stand as a memorial or a highlight among the people of Israel. Then Joshua and all the army went through, and then the Lord caused all the water to come back over the Jordan. And verse 21 says, then Joshua said to the Israelites, in the future your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, this is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before your eyes, and it kept it dry until you were all across, just as he did the Red Sea when he dried it up until we had all crossed over. Why do we do this? He did this so that all the nations of the earth will know that the Lord's hand is powerful, and so that you might fear the Lord your God forever. Let me just try and take you back to the Jordan River. That you are on the banks of the Jordan. Your destiny is in front of you. You're on the banks of the Jordan River, and behind you is the wilderness. Behind you is the past. Behind you is a place of waiting, a place where you're wondering, is God going to come through for me? Behind you is the past. Behind you is this area where is God going to show up? Is he going to do something amazing? But in front of you is the promise. A land flowing with milk and honey. And this is the fulfillment of years and centuries of prayer and prophecy right in front of them. And when they crossed over on the dry ground, God didn't say, celebrate and move on. He said, no, I want you to stop. I want you to get 12 lads and head back into the miracle. Head back into the dry ground and pick up 12 stones and then bring them back into the promised land. I want you to take a piece of the miracle with you. Why? Because these stones weren't just rocks. They were reminders. They were memorials of what God has done. They were like God's done markers, like of his faithfulness. They were highlights. And God is sort of saying, I said, I want you to choose. I want you to go in and pick up something from the miracle, because he says, I don't want you to let this moment pass without making it permanent. He wants you to take it with you. And let me tell you, after every football game, when I was playing first grade down in Sydney, after every game of football, we'd come back into the change room and the coach would share about the game. And then he would say to us, he says, okay, now I want you to talk amongst yourselves and I want you to choose the highlight of the game and talk it with your mates or your other teammates. And you might say, oh, mate, the amount of tackles you did that game was unbelievable. Or you scored that try, or your line-out work was brilliant, or whatever it was, you would discuss the highlight. Why? Because it gives you momentum for the next game. That was the whole outcome. Every time I play golf, I try to think of a highlight, but there is none. So that's why I don't play much. But it's a great reminder of what we can do at the end of the year is to choose a highlight to give us momentum into 2025. And I want to encourage you to, as I said before, choose the highlight. What was it? If it's one thing, you can choose that highlight. Don't focus on the bad thing. Put that aside. Give yourself a break. And put the problems and the whatever it is aside and don't talk about it, because, God's sick of it and everyone else around you is probably sick of it. He's sick of your negative attitude and he wants you to just lift up and talk about a highlight. And then why don't you talk about it with other people in the church, the highlights. Commonly we talk about what's going wrong in our worlds, but why don't we today, when we go out and have tea and coffee, talk about what something great's happening. Talk about how cool the Christmas lights are or something. Just something amazing that's happening in our world. Choose the highlights. I got so many highlights for 2024. The Forge Camp. I just thought it was a highlight. Going up there at Rod's farm, it was freezing. It was freezing and no one takes winter. We haven't got winter clothes in Cairns. It was like 3 degrees in the morning. The fog didn't lift to about 9. And we're all around this fire, but it was a highlight. Seeing these girls on stage, Cara and Annette Starry, it's a highlight. Just to acknowledge their goodness, what God has done. Just going through the year, there's so many highlights that we can do, and to choose the highlights so the lowlights become insignificant. And the deal is we all have moments where God has shown up. We all have moments where God does something miraculous in our world. But the question is, are we going to build a highlight or are we going to let that miracle fade away? And the Israelites, Joshua said, I want you to grab something from the middle of the miracle and I want you to build a place, build an altar for him. And the Jordan crossing, it was a miracle. The crossing over from the wilderness into the promised land. It symbolizes from death to life, going into this new land. And Joshua sends those 12 men back to grab some stones, grab some rocks. And it would have been risky because the last time they took 12 men into the promised land, it didn't go that well with them. In Numbers 13, Moses sent 12 guys in to spy out the land. 10 came back with a negative report. Joshua, who's leading the army now, says it's good. Caleb says it's good. But the voices, the 10 negative voices, caused a bad result and a bad memory that affected their future for 40 years of just wandering the wilderness, waiting for a generation of focusing on the problem die. And the two that went in was Caleb and Joshua. And so it would have been risky for him to send 12 guys in. I think the Israelite army, the last time we sent 12 guys in here, it didn't come back good. But Joshua says, I'm going to do the same selection process, but the task is different. The task is going to be totally different. So he told them to grab the stones in the middle and carry it into the promised land. And let me tell you, if I've been repeating it all morning, is that God tells them to take something from the middle of the miracle, from the middle of that miracle, and carry it into their future. And God said, I want you to carry the stones. He didn't say drag them. He didn't say leave the stones behind. He says pick them up, put them on your shoulders and carry them through. It requires strength. It requires determination. It requires commitment. Don't drag your highlights through, or don't leave them behind. He says pick them up and put them on your shoulders and carry them through. Why? Because the weight of the miracle will become the strength of your testimony. The weight of what God is doing in your life is going to be an awesome testimony of what God is going to do. So other people, not just you, can feel it. So God's going to do. So pick it up. Pick up what God is going to do in your life. And then when he said set the stones down, he didn't say just chuck them there. He didn't say it's just random. It was intentional. He said pile them up, build a memorial, build an altar, build a highlight. They were there as a place of worship where God gets the glory, where God does something. We just don't stack them around. We take our time and we build a memorial that will last. We can do a highlight that will speak not just in our generation, but the generations to come. The highlights you choose to carry will define the story that you're about to tell. It will help you in the future. But some of us keep replaying the lowlights, the mistakes, the failures, the pains, and wondering why we are stuck. We wonder why we are stuck when all we're doing is repeating, whatever it is. I never can get ahead. I never can get many friends. And you're repeating it. No wonder why you're not moving. Our voice, our mouth has so much power. Why don't you decide that 2025 is going to be different? It's going to be a year of breakthrough. It's going to be a year of healing. It's going to be a year of success. Why don't you start declaring it now? So then you got momentum moving into 2025. You know, one of the things that the Lord's been speaking to me about, and I'll probably get a little bit more clarity when I'm on the cruise next week. Never been on a cruise, so we're looking forward to it. Is that I've told the kids, I said, I'll wake you up at 6 o'clock. We can go run around the deck and then we can sit at the chair and we can read our Bibles and we can. I said, what? We're doing. I said, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to get up early, see the sunrise on a boat, do a wee off the side. Can you do that? Someone said, yeah, you can do that. Are you allowed to do that in the morning? I just thought you could. And but the thing that God's been speaking to me about for 2025 for me is prayer. It's just that relationship with God at a whole new level. I went for a walk on Yorkie's Knob Beach the other week. And I haven't walked on the beach for prayer I can't remember. And it was just like, I felt like God was saying, oh, isn't it beautiful just to walk with God? See His creation, smell the air. Too often, all we're doing is smelling problems, aren't we? We wake up in the morning, oh, there's this happening, and this happening. This. I go, man, you know what? I just want to just spend time with God. So that's my focus next year, is just really just prayer, getting into that. But yet we can get stuck. When God has moved in our lives, you see it all through the Old Testament saints. They did some amazing things. When God moved in their lives, they built altars to God as a place where the miracle happened. When Noah stepped off the boat, built an altar. When Abraham saw the promised land, he built an altar. When Jacob wrestled with God all night, he woke up in the morning and built an altar and says, oh my God, this place is awesome. This is the house of God. When Gideon was about to deliver Israel, he built an altar and said, God is peace, and built an altar. When Moses went through the Red Sea, he built an altar. And building altars or building highlights in our life, they symbolize devotion. They symbolize worship. They symbolize this covenant relationship that you have with God. That's what you do. That's what you're building for. You're marking a pivotal moment in your world where God has come through, and you mark it as a highlight. And hopefully you keep that highlight for the rest of your life. Every Christian has had a highlight where God has saved them, where you once were lost. You were blind to the things of God. And then you have a salvation moment. You see God. You experience His salvation. It's a highlight. I still remember it when I was playing football, when I did my knee. And when I did my knee and Dad puts me in the car, and it felt like all my dreams were just shattered. I was playing for New South Wales, did the knee. I thought, man, shattered. But in that car, I felt this call of God. By the time Dad closed the door and walked around to open the door for him to get in, I felt the peace of God. And I felt like God's got a different plan, a different thing. And you know what? What turned out to be one of the greatest disasters of my life, the dreams have been shattered, turned to be the greatest thing. Because if that didn't happen, we wouldn't be here today. God changed something, and it became a highlight that's changed my life forever. You've all got highlights. What about your highlight reels? There would be your salvation moment. Maybe it's your wedding day. Maybe it's the birth of your kids. Maybe it's the healing that God's brought you through. Maybe it's holidays. You're setting up some highlights in your world. Because let me tell you, God works the miracle. Our job is to build the highlight. Our job is to build the altar. Our job is to carry the stones out and build the altar. God has moved, but unfortunately, some have neglected to build an altar, build a highlight, so it fails to affect them in the future. The problem that I see a lot is some are highlighting the wrong things. We're highlighting, instead of carrying stones of God's faithfulness, God's provision, God's love, we're building altars of failures, of our mistakes, our shames, our regrets, our losses. And we're building that. And let me tell you, you cannot carry a highlight and a low light at the same time. Can I encourage you to drop the low light? Pick up the highlight so you can get momentum into 2025. We've got to tear down those wrong altars. But there's a power in the highlight. There's power in it. So much power that it's not just for us. Because Joshua didn't say, with the highlight, this is for us. We're going to grab the 12 stone and we're going to build it on. This is just for you. No, he says, when your children ask. I love it. When your children, what do these stones mean? You'll tell them about it. You'll tell them about the highlights. You might tell them your salvation story. I was once lost, but then I became found. I was broken and I was made whole. I was negative and then I became positive. I always was gloomy, but now I see a great day ahead. I only live for today, but now I live for the future. And I spend 1,000 years and billions of years of eternity into heaven. That's a good highlight to talk about. But you tell them how God made a way when there was no way. That's legacy. That's God's story. That's faith being passed down to generation upon generation. You know, one of the goals that we do, you know, what you have in life is not just, your story doesn't end with you. Your story has a legacy. Your story, your faith goes to the next generation. I'm so grateful that my dad got saved when I was about 11. His story has changed my life. And you guys, you've been in that. You've seen parents and family members. You've seen their story, and it probably had some effect. Some good, some not so good. But it has some stuff. But the legacy of faith to be passed down so that to the generations can see. The altar wasn't just for them. The highlight wasn't just for them. It was for the generations to come. And the generations to come after that. So some of us need to grab our stones and build something for our kids. We need to build something for our community. We need to build something for the people of Cairns, for the people that come after us. So can I tell you, let your highlights preach a sermon. Preach the message of God. Preach the gospel. Preach that the Lord is powerful. Preach that the Lord is faithful. Preach that the Lord is still working in your life. Preach that story. Don't preach how God hasn't come through. Preach that He's coming through. There's going to be a great story ahead. Healing's coming. Miracles are coming. Provision's coming. It's coming. Get excited about it. And those highlights, those memorials, man, they're as often as real as the moment. When you look back at these of memories, when you look back at a photo of your kid being born, I look back at a photo of all my kids being born. I remember when Jonah was born. Just there, just like 20 years ago. And I was just me and Jonah in the room. Anna was getting attended to. And then I was with Jonah in this room, our first kid. I'm going, man, God, what do we do now? What do we do now? And I remember this conversation. It's like yesterday. It's 20 years ago. And I called him Gil, named after Paul and Renee Gill. But I called him Gil. I said, Gil, we're going to get through this. We're going to have a wonderful life. And it was like the start of a journey. It's the start of a story. But it's the highlights. So when you look at a photo, maybe Les's photos, one of the greatest photographers of all time. And we look at his photos, it'll bring back some memories that spark something great. Because memories are so powerful that they can actually shape your present. They can shape the present. They can turn a situation around. You might feel gloomy, but you look at something in the past where you've actually won and got through. It can shape your present. If I beat it then, I can beat it now. And you'll help you. And I love this in Psalm 42, verse 4. It says, my heart is breaking as I remember how it used to be. And frankly, some of you might be feeling that way right now. Your heart is breaking. Like you've been living in the shadows of the past for too long, and it's breaking your heart. Can I just say that God didn't tell you to build your life on bad memories? He didn't tell you to say live on the memory. He said, I want you to build on top of the memories. Memories are meant to fuel us for the future, not trap us in the past. I see so many people that are trapped through trauma, and there is a journey of healing through all that, but they let the problem trap them in their future. Church, one of the greatest things about C3 Cairns is that we're an encouraging church. I don't want you to live trapped in any bad memory that's holding you back. Can I tell you, put that away. 2025 is going to be the greatest year of your life. We say that every year, but I believe it. I believe it. It's 25. You know what it is? It's 5 years away till we'll be celebrating Jesus was here on earth. You know, when you look about the year 2030, I'm really excited about the year 2030 because 2,000 years earlier, Jesus walked the earth spreading the gospel. And I reckon the next 3 years, we should just be preaching out of the Gospels, the story of Jesus. We should be doing it anyhow. But don't let it trap you in the past. Build on those memories. And it says, I walked among the crowds of worshipers, leading them leading a great procession to the house of God. They were singing for joy, not crying in pain or reminiscing of bad things. They were singing for joy. When was the last time you sung for joy? When was the last time you let the worship just fill your spirit? You know, sometimes I'm in the car and I turn everything down, the music up, and I sing, and it builds me up. Might be a bad sort of day or a bad meeting that you have, but you put the praise worship on and I start singing. I'm like, what was his name? Tom Cruise in the car singing Freedom on that movie, and it builds your spirit up when you sing. Tom Cruise is not a great example, of course, but singing praise, singing for joy and giving thanks amidst the sound of a great celebration. Your ability to move forward in 2025, it can be hindered or it can be helped, depending on what the highlight you choose. I've seen so many people, like I meet them and you just try and say something great to them, but they bring it down. I'm thinking, I tried. But you can go live in your own self-pity. It's like, I can't help you if you're not going to try and do anything yourself. And I want to help them. You want to love them, but you got to make choices. Choose those highlights. Live in them. Live in them. The wow moment will be lost if we don't highlight it. I think of Michelangelo. He loved God. He did a wow moment. He painted the 16th chapel. Did I say it right? 16 chapels. You know what I mean. That one. But he painted it. He made a highlight, not just for him, for future generations. We'll always remember how much he loved God. How much God meant to him. He painted this beautiful Sistine Chapel. And the moment happened, the highlight needs to be built. And people will see it. They will remember it, which creates emotion, creates the wonder and the awe of God. And I've seen when people fail to make highlights, I've seen marriages destroyed by failing to highlight moments. I've seen families scattered because of lack of highlights. One of the reasons why we're going on a cruise, Sammy finished year 12. So all of us are going on a highlight, the whole family. We're capturing a moment for our family so that we remember. A few years ago, like 5 years ago, we went to New Zealand. Josie and Phoebe cannot remember it. They can't really remember that highlight, especially the time when Jonah walked at a caravan park and there was a girl at the caravan park that fancied him at 12. And I watched Jonah go for a walk down the road with this girl and I thought, look at this, Jonah's first love. It was a highlight. It's a highlight, Johnny. He was strong, told her to get in line. This Giles is so good looking. Get in line. As we come to a close, thank you guys. Thanks. Look at Soddy, champion. As we come to a close, let me just say, God does the miracle. We build the altar. And I love that. I love that. It's partnership. It's partnering with God. God parted the Jordan. God made a way. And then he told his people, you build the altar. That's partnership. God moves, then we respond. We build the altar. We carry the stones. It doesn't just remind us of what God has done, but it points everything around us to Jesus, everything to God. It points us back to him. It creates awe. It creates wonder. It stirs wonder. It creates change in our lives. Church, can I encourage you? Don't let the highlight of God's goodness go unnoticed. Don't let the lowlights hold you back. Don't let them hold you back. It's only hurting you. Don't let them hold you back. Pick up your stones and build your altar. Why? Because he says to show the nations of the earth, they might see that the Lord's hand is powerful. And so you might fear the Lord your God forever. Church, can we stand as we come to a close?